Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. Today I'm going to talk to you about the latest VOD release, Capone, from director Josh Trank, starring Tom Hardy, Linda Cardellini, and Matt Dillon. And I'll give you my thoughts right after the jump. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know about it. Now, let's dive into this film. So, let's start off talking about who Josh Trank is. He may not mean anything to some people out there, but Josh Trank is a director who, for a while there, was one of the hottest things going in Hollywood. He did a film that was on the to-do list for scripts and made a great film, one of my favorite films of that year, called Chronicle. And off of that film was buzzing, and he was being thrown Spider-Man and Venom. He wound up getting Fantastic Four. He even had a standalone version of Star Wars that he was attached to. But while doing Fantastic Four, I wasn't on set, so I can't speak of it, but apparently a lot of issues took place, and the film was derided once it actually came out. It was terrible. It's a terrible movie. So, it is said that he left Star Wars, but it's probably a little bit tit for tat, one or the other. It doesn't matter, but he basically dropped off the face of the planet after Fantastic Four came out. And so this is his first big film to kind of get back on the road to where he is and was a quality director. So this is the third film on the filmography that's Chronicle, Fantastic Four, and now this. Originally entitled Fonzo. We'll get into that a little bit later, but stars Tom Hardy as the lead role of Al Capone. Now, this is a little bit different than a lot of Al Capone stories. A lot of times Al Capone, they're showing you at the height of his career or on the rise to his career as one of the leading mob bosses in Chicago. This film takes a different approach, and instead of looking at the stuff that we already know, the stuff that has been repeated in many, many gangster films, even Scarface, this film talks about what happens when Capone goes to jail, and after he goes to prison, his health starts deteriorating. He has suffered from syphilis since he was a teenager, and his dementia starts setting in. So the prison releases him to his family in Florida, and basically this film takes place the year before his death to show how his health deteriorates and how his mental faculties start caving in on himself, and a man who used to be in power and so much wealth, power, and control no longer has that within himself. It's an interesting take to look at for Capone. Doesn't necessarily make for an entertaining or thought-provoking film. But here are my likes. I do actually dig the concept of spending time in the mind of somebody who was on the top of their game, was well choreographed, well put together, had the ins and outs, was powerful, women loved him, had all of those things going for him, and now his brain no longer functions in the way that he needs to even remember that height, to start looking inward at some of the things that he used to do and how that stuff is terrible, and seeing how some of his right hand men or women that he trusted with that, who doing that stuff, he was in the room with him stuff. Now, because he's not placing himself in that world, he's seeing it through the eyes of someone who is not of that world, and it's just disgusting to him. And that's cool to see. It's cool to play with. And I think that, of all the other things, is the price of admission for this flick, because it just sort of gives you an eye of like, oh yeah, when they're in that world, they know nothing else but to kind of continue on with those habits. But if something happens where they're looking at it with a reset and now they're looking at that world again, it's utter mayhem and terror and disgust. So that's fascinating to play with. Linda Cardellini is phenomenal in this movie as an actress. She's great. Unfortunately, I don't know if she gets enough because there's not enough scenes. This is Tom Hardy's film, for good or worse, but it's a Tom Hardy picture, and so she just gets the side project of the wife that helps out on the side while trying to clean up and help a man who is no longer the man that she once loved. He is now a shell of that. And it's cool to see her battle with living her life, living the sins of her husband's life, and loving this man, but trying to figure out where that balance comes in between her and her actual existence in itself. And skeletons that pop up in his closet. I think Josh Trank does a really good job of creating sort of the essence of what it feels like to be in a madman's mind. A lot of this movie feels more than like a biopic or a typical biopic. It feels like a horror movie or a Clockwork Orange or The Shining, where you're in the brain of somebody who's just not working, and the movie acts as that. To a fault sometimes, because I think it becomes a little too scattered and there's not one clear focus of what Josh is trying to get across. But I think if it's just utter mayhem and utter a plunge into a descent of chaos and madness and dementia, that comes across well. And I think that is what he was trying to do. I'm gonna dislike half of that. I don't know if that makes for a good film. I was entertained about halfway through though. I kept going, it's like, what is this movie? Like, what are we trying to get across? What's the point? What is the messaging that we're trying to get to in this film? Because I feel like it gets so lost in the weeds of being, artsy is not the word, but trying to hit home so much of the mental weaknesses that Capone has that you never get to the point of having any type of character or heart moment. It's all feels superficial, which is unfortunate. It's hard to watch that and feel, actually rephrase that. It's not hard to watch that because I never really wanted to take my eyes off of it. It's just hard to come away with anything from it. Tom Hardy as an actor. This is interesting. He's good in this film. He's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Like, again, a lot of the faults that I have for his character come in the fact that I think he is putting on a facade or a caricature of Al Capone and not so much getting to the heart or the character of it. I think he's doing the mannerisms and the way he talks and the way he walks perfectly fine. I just don't think there's any heart behind it. But this goes on more to Tom Hardy as a whole. I think Tom Hardy is a really good actor. I have reached my tipping point of Tom Hardy doing the mumble jumble, how you can't understand a word I'm saying, I'm talking like this. And this one, it's a little weird, different, because he typically has a cigar in his mouth, but that makes it even more so. But when I start thinking about Tom Hardy's career, I only think of him doing these affectations of voices that it becomes difficult to understand. And it's this weird thing where I don't know if he thinks because his voice has changed or his demeanor has changed, that just means that you're a good actor or you're putting on an excellent performance. It's funny because I think in all the films that he's done, even if he spoke normally or as close to normally as you can, given the dialect or like language barrier, like where your region you're from, like if you're from New York, you have to speak with a New York accent or Boston or whatever, that's fine. Those aren't the issues. You get stuff like Bane or even what he's doing in Venom, and you're kind of just like, wait, you don't have to go through this many hoops to play a character, because it's clear you have the talent. Somewhere in his brain, he thinks just doing that vocal stuff is effective, and for me, it's becoming more tiring than anything. And in this, it works because I feel like that's sort of what Capone is, but it doesn't work because I'm now watching an actor work and I'm not seeing an actor emote or do the character work underneath. Like, I don't feel anything for Al Capone in this. And that's also sort of the problem with doing a movie like this as a whole. When you do a movie like this, you should have somebody that you can reach out to and you actually like. For us to watch a man go into descent of madness, unlike with The Shining, there was a glimmer of hope that he, at some point in time, was a good person. To an extent, he beats his wife. But you know what I mean. There was a good character beat to him. Coming into this movie, we all know that Al Capone is a piece of shit. So watching a film of a man that we know has done so much dirt in their life, watching him go from being the biggest crime boss in the world to a shell of himself. I don't care if he's shitting and pissing and not remembering what's happening in his life, because he kind of earned that. So it's a weird thing to watch a film that your whole point is to watch the descent into madness, but I don't know if I'm supposed to care. Like, if the point of this is for me to care about him, because I don't. I care about his wife somewhat, but even she's knows what he was doing. Maybe not all of the extent of what what he was doing, but she's aware of his exploits. So it's a weird thing to kind of try to connect me to a character or a person who I actively can't connect to, but then watch him go through this descent. And so that's where my issue with this movie, because I think that the boxes are checked. There's some solid acting, some solid directing. There's a clear-cut choice that has been made in this movie to tell the story different than what you normally get from Capone and see the mental breakdown of him. But the biggest issue is when this was all said and done, I just sit here and I'm like, I don't know what the point of this film was. Like, what were you cathartically trying to tell me, Josh? Because I don't get it in this flick. But I am really glad that Josh Trank is back to directing. While I don't think this is his best work, I still think that's Chronicle. Chronicle is one of my favorite movies, especially sci-fi wise, sci-fi comic wise, in a really long time. And so I think that it's a good thing that he is getting that second chance. I had been hearing about this movie Fonzo. That's what it was called for the longest, because for those who don't know, Al Capone's full name is Alfonso Capone, and his family called him Fonzo. Probably wouldn't have gotten the connection of that if you actually named it that, but he had been working on this for a while, and I'm glad to see that he got top tier talent, that he's still able to get work and do stuff, because I think he is talented. I just don't know if this is a film that's going to kind of put his name back on the mark, but he might not want to get back that high. He might want to take his time to kind of do what it is he wants to do. So for me, this film is a bit of a miss. It's weird. I did not have a hard time watching this or not like what I was seeing, but I felt very empty caloried, if you will. Like, it felt like eating cotton candy when it was all said and done. And I think for something that was trying to be as weighty and important as it appeared it was trying to be, it just missed the mark a little bit for me. But what did you guys think about it? Have you seen Capone? Did you have any desire to see it? Like, I know a lot of people have seen this film come out and they're like, I don't care about that. I don't want to see that. A lot of it, some of it is the makeup that I didn't talk about. It didn't look bad in motion because a lot of stuff is shot in dark. When the daytime stuff came, it became a little bit of an issue, but I don't think the makeup was that big of a problem, because Tom Hardy's a good enough actor that made the makeup work. I just think I spoke enough about Tom. But I think it's a film that no one really had any desire to see. It wasn't on anyone's radars. Even if this stuff was still allowed to be back in theaters, like, and we weren't social distancing or on quarantine lock, I don't know if this would have still drawn in an audience. But it was cool enough to watch it when I could just watch it at home. But I don't think this is something that you should actively go see. But if you've seen it, let me know. You can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that it's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We are there. This current episode, we are talking about the other VOD release of the weekend, Scoob, the new animated film from Warner Brothers Animation. And normally this would be my sign off, where I'd say, got a ticket, all that good stuff. But I just want to make sure that everybody stay safe out there, be well, love your loved ones, check on your friends. We're all in this together. Some are getting through it easier than others. Some are having a hard time. Just check on everybody, all right? Be safe and take care, guys. Thanks.